Well, last week's fly tying format seemed to really suit a lot of people, so I thought I would try and carry on in that vein for the next few weeks at least, while I've got some time on my hands. So what I'm going to do this week is I'm going to tie you 3 of my favourite buzzers and explain how I like to fish them. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first fly I'm going to tie for you today is the quill buzzer. Now, I call it the Barker buzzer because it came to me by way of competition fishing. So a good friend of mine, Ronnie Christie, was fishing with Dave Barker many years ago now, and as I recall, he got a really good shoeing from Dave, but Dave was generous enough to give him one of the flies, and then Ronnie shared it with the rest of the army team. And since then, it's a fly I refer to often as the only buzzer you ever need. So let's get on and tie it. The hook in the vise is a Hanak H200 barbless hook. This one's on a heavy wire and it's finished in black nickel. And the thread I'm going to be using today to tie this fly is UTC. It's 140 denier, and as you can see, it's a black thread. Now, while we're just getting some thread onto the hook, I'm just going to start in behind the eye, and I'm going to use my rat's tail to work the thread into touch and turns. Now, I'm going to tie 3 buzzers and they're all going to be black, and there's a good reason for that. Most of the buzzers in my box are black. I do have the occasional olive and brown buzzers, but generally speaking, I will always reach for a black buzzer first when fishing. It's just a percentage game. Most of the buzzers you find in the water tend to be of a black colour. Occasionally you'll get small olive or you'll get some brown buzzer, but on most occasions they are black. Now, this is a little tip that might help you in the future. I'm using some of these Premier Eye feather quills from Trout line. I'll just put that up to the other camera actually. And what I've done is I've taken a few off the stem and I've actually soaked them in this ramekin I've got here. Now, the ramekin has lukewarm water. It's not boiling, it's not cold, it's nice and warm. Now, the idea is that it's going to make the quill much more supple and less likely to snap on you when you're wrapping it around the shank. So I'll just take one out of the ramekin dish, try and get any excess water off. And then what I'm going to do is find the good side. The reason I like these quills from Trout line is the banding on them is absolutely spot on. Really a nice differentiation of colour, and you'll see that as I'm bringing it up. So I've caught it right in at the end of the fly, and I'm going to bring my thread up. Now, I'm going to pause for a second. Now, when I'm bringing my thread back up, I want to keep this buzzer as thin as possible. So what I'm going to do is just give my bobbin a little click anti-clockwise, which flattens out the thread, and then I can bring my thread up, which gives you that smooth body on the buzzer. All the way up to the thorax area, and then I'm going to put several turns in here. Now, with this buzzer, I love to use it for straight lining, and I often fish 3 of these on the same cast, a size 10 on the point, and maybe 3 12s up, or a 14 if the buzzers in the water are of that size. So I've got my hackle pliers around the quill, and I'm just going to concentrate a sec. It's getting started is the hardest bit. I'm hardly putting any pressure onto these hackle pliers, should I say, sorry. And I'm just bringing it all the way up. You can see I'm leaving a little bit of segmentation with the black thread underneath. I'll bring it all the way up to the thorax. Then I can grab my thread and I'm going to lock it into place. And it's always a relief when you get that first wrap in, because the quill, as I said earlier, it is very delicate, and I've just got a rag end there I'm going to remove. it can be brittle and hard to work with. But certainly that trick with the ramekin dish is really worth bearing in mind if you're tying batches of these. And I tend to tie my buzzers in batches because, as you'll see later on, it is a process. So the next thing then, we're going to add cheeks. And I like to use some biots, and I like this sunburst colour. I also use vivid orange, green, brown, whatever takes my fancy really, but this is my favourite. It's a sunburst sort of dye, and you get the biots dyed. There's various companies do it, and what you do is you separate out the biots, strip them off like so, and they come with a Sharpie point, and at the end you've ripped off the stem. Now I'll just put that to the side. What I'm going to do is catch in my side first. Some boys do tie them in at the same time, and I'm very jealous of that. I like to just tie them in one at a time. I'm not tying commercially, so I've got all the time in the world. Take your time, just get them nice and even. And trap that into place. So once you've got that, make sure they're kind of looking the same, either side. That's looking okay. Then what I'm going to do is build a little lump here of thorax. It doesn't take long when you're using 140 denier thread. Just, you want to get a little rugby ball there if you like. And then bring your thread once again to the front of the fly. Now I prefer tying on straight hooks. You might see buzzers tied on curved hooks, and I'll show you one later that I use. It's exactly the same as this, only it's on a curved hook. Now why have the two different shapes? So for me, I have the two different shaped buzzers because I like to fish with the curved buzzer hook underneath the bung. If I'm fishing buzzers static, I want them completely still, I would fish the curved hooks underneath the bung. I don't know why, I just think it works. It works for me. The straight hooks are reserved for straight lining or washing line. So next then, let's get back to the fly. I'm going to bring my cheeks forward, like so. I'll bring a loose turn over, and I just want to make sure that your side looks okay, my side looks okay. Now I'm going to pinch down now, 2 more turns, quite tight turns. Now keeping tension on the thread, and this is key. Grab the end of your biots and twist them away. Now if you don't keep tension on your thread, this will not work. Now you might notice that I've still got a little bit shown there, and that's no problem at all, because when I bring my thread over another couple of times, I can hide that. And what I want to do is get my whip finish tool out, 2 turns, and then I can remove my thread. So that's the first stage done, if you like. The tying's easy. Other than bringing that quill up, that can be quite dicey sometimes. But the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use some super glue to seal the fly. Now this is a process, and it's quite a long process. So what I'm only going to do is one stage of that process for you. So you put the super glue all over the buzzer. This seals in the thread. Just seals everything up. Now, at this point, I would then bring in a foam block and remove the buzzer that I've just tied. Now, this one's completely dry because I tied it yesterday. So when I'm doing buzzers, it's quite a long, laborious task. I do them all to this stage first of all, and then they go off to dry for maybe 3 or 4 hours. I don't usually wait all day, but it was quite late yesterday when I decided to do this video, so I tied it yesterday. As you can see, the glue's all dried and it looks not bad as it is. And in the good old days, what we used to do is just put 4 or 5 coats of super glue on, and then that was the fly finished. But then came Sally Hansen hard as nails, and I know a lot of tyers like to put several coats of Sally Hansen on. Now, I used to do that, but what I was finding was, because I don't tie commercially, I end up using about that much of the bottle and the rest goes off. So you can get thinners and stuff, but I don't bother. What I do now is I use Solaris Bone Dry, and it's I find it just as effective. Some people will, I'm sure, disagree. Let me know your reasons in the comments below if you think that the varnish is much better than the Solaris. Okay, so I'm going to just get my brush. I'm not worried about the eye. I want to make sure I've got good coverage. That's the most important thing. Don't worry about filling the eye. We'll sort that out momentarily. But just get a good coverage of Solaris on. And you can apply as many coats as you see fit. For the purpose of the video, I'm only going to put 1 coat on. It'll be boring watching me layering up buzzers. So we'll just put 1 coat on. Now, as you've seen, I was pretty liberal with that. And what I've got here is simply a feather from this cheap Indian cock cape. And before I cure the buzzer, I'm going to pass that through the eye of the hook. That completely cleans your eye. And then I'll come in and cure it. Now, what kind of cast would I fish this on? I tend to fish buzzers in teams of 4, and I'd have maybe a 22-foot leader on, depending on where I want them in the water, really. And the point fly would go a size 10 on the point, and then 4 foot up from that, I would have a size 12, another 4 feet, another size 12, and mostly I would have another 4 feet and another size 12, but on occasion I do put much smaller flies on my top dropper. Just depends on what effect I want to cause. Now, if we think back to the start of the video, and this is important, I tied this on a heavy gauged wire. This fly is designed to sink through the water column really quickly, and you get a lovely finish like so. So the quill buzzer, I described it as the only buzzer you'll ever need, and that used to be the case for me until this buzzer came along in my life. It's called the Vicar. So I'm going to get on and tie the Vicar for you. I'm using the same hook as we had before, which was the Hanak H200. It's at a size 10, it's on a heavy wire, and it's finished in black nickel. Now I'll just get my thread started in behind the eye, and then before I come any further down, I'm going to grab my scissors and take away my rat's tail. Now, the Vicar was introduced to me by a lovely gentleman, Alan Smith, up on Loch Leven, and I've been using it ever since quite extensively. Now, I'd fish it very similar to the quill buzzer, only this would be a point fly for me. It sinks like a stone, and it's super effective. Now, I'm just going to catch in some flexi floss, just in at the thorax here. Once I'm convinced that's trapped in place, what I'm going to do is pull my thread. Sorry, I'm going to pull the flexi floss so it's tight, and I'm going to use the flexi floss to guide my thread down in touching turns. Now, what I'm doing here is I've got this at an angle, maybe a 30-degree angle, and I'm bringing my thread over at an angle onto the flexi floss, and then because it's under tension, it's bringing that thread down in touching turns, making it nice and tidy. I'm going to bring it all the way back, past where a barb would be if you're using a barbless hook, right to the back of the fly. Now again, I want the thread nice and flat, and if I give that bobbin a little click anti-clockwise while I'm telling you I'm doing it, it will flatten out my thread. and then I can come back up in touch and turns as best I can, and this is going to give me quite a thin but smooth body all the way up to the thorax area, and I'll get some extra turns in there like so. Now the thing with buzzer fishing, and where a lot of people go wrong I think, is they're only very small. You can strip buzzers and catch fish, but more often than not, slow is better. The slower the better. So when you've got your team of buzzers out there, the idea is just to keep up with them. If you've got a little wind coming on the fishery, use that to push your line and move your buzzers naturally. Now what I'm doing with the flexi floss is I'm just twisting it until I get a rope into my flexi floss. Now I'm not putting too much tension on it, because what I want to do is have a really thick, prominent rib coming up the fly. Looking to get 3 or 4 turns in. Just keep that nice and prominent. Now as I come up to the thorax area, I can trap that into place like so. And then simply snip away my spare flexi floss. Now for the rib, you can use different colours. I like to stick with the traditional silver, hence the name Vicar, but some people like to use gold. I've used red in the past to great effect, as well as pearl. But today we'll stick to the plan, and we'll use the silver. So the silver one I'm using at the moment is the Simplified tinsel. As you can see, it's just a silver tinsel. Now what I like about this, it's broad and it doesn't take much effort to get the effect you're after. Excuse me, it's not playing. There we go. Once you've got it on the fly, like it took me a minute there, but we got there in the end. I like to get a couple of turns in just to make sure that silver's really shining through on the fly. Then I'll bring it back over, trap that into place. Excuse my hands, they seem to be everywhere at the moment. And once I've got that in place, I can come in and simply remove the excess. I'll put that to the side because there's enough there for another couple of flies. So next, we're going to build up our little thorax here at the head. Now, I want to leave approximately 2 millimeters of the silver. You don't want it taking over the fly. And then build the head. Just check your side, it's looking okay. And then I can come in with my whip finish tool and finish this off. Now I tend to tie these in the larger sizes, 10s and 12s. As I say, I like them near the bottom of the bottom of my cast when the fish are sitting deeper. I can remove that. Now I'm just going to go over it with my fingers to remove any excess wax that might be on the fly. Now, unlike the quill buzzer, I like to just give this a couple of coats of super glue. Now, obviously, I'm not going to make you sit and wait for the super glue to dry. But what happens is it does soak into the thread and the fly. So although it looks quite glossy now, and you can hardly see that pronounced rib, when it does dry, it sucks into the material. And I'll just take that away, and I can show you what it looks like with just one coat of super glue. Now this one's tied on a different hook. This is on a 230, which will make it sink a lot slower. But you can see that it's now just got a sheen to it. It's not glossy like the quill buzzer is. It's just got a sheen. So the Vickers buzzer, it's a great way if you want to give them a menu of things to eat, then you can put a mixture of Vickers and quill buzzers on. That's what I tend to do when I'm starting. But once they start picking out a particular buzzer, I've got no qualms with going 4 flies, all the same patterns, just different sizes perhaps. You get better turnover if you've got your heavier fly on the point and your smaller flies up the cast. So there we go. That's 2 of my favourite buzzers, which I use predominantly all the time. Now the last one then we're going to tie is a much lighter weight buzzer. So sometimes when the buzzers are near the surface, the fish will take them before they get a chance to reach the surface and cast. And you can see sometimes with the waveforms of rises that the fish are not quite taking off the top. They're taking subsurface, and very often they're taking buzzer subsurface. So what we want is something a little bit more lighter. So I'm just going to put the hook we're going to use into the vise. Now this is a Hanak 230 barbless hook. As you can see, it's very similar to the 200, only it's got a more upturned point and it's on a medium wire, which means it's going to be a little bit lighter. Now I'm going to switch over now from my UTC thread that I've been using for most of this video, and I'm going to switch to some trout line 50 denier Sumo power thread. Now, as always with the nano silk, I am going to, on this occasion, get a spot of super glue onto the shank of the hook, and then I can use my nano silk to just spread that up. Now, as you can see, there's hardly any, you might not even be able to see the super glue actually. I'm going to bring my thread all the way to the back of the fly. Now, this is a great wee fly when you want to fish buzzers on a washing line on a floater, but it will keep your flies really high in the water. When you're fishing on a floater and you're trying to achieve that first couple of feet, you must reduce the length of your tippet material from your floating line to the first fly. I generally start with about 6 feet, and if I'm still getting too deep, I'll cut it down till there's only 4 feet between my fly line and my first fly. Makes changing lines a little difficult, but it is really effective way of keeping your flies up in that taking zone. What I'm going to use here, if I can locate it on my desk, is some of this stuff. It's magic tinsel. This one's black, and the thing with this, I'll just hold that there so you can see, is if you can stretch it, and it's quite a versatile material. I'm going to use it for my rib, and it's got 2 sides. It's got a peacock sheen on one side and a dark sheen on the other. Now I want the peacock to show through, so I'm going to grab that, and the side I want to come up goes down onto the shank. I hope I've explained that well enough actually, because it did sound complicated even to me. But basically there's 2 sides, and if you want a particular side to come up, whatever side you want to show on the fly needs to be tied down onto the shank. So next then, for this, I'm not going to use thread for the body. I've got some hens dubbing here, and basically if you want the number, it's number 30, and it's just a black blend, very delicate blend. You don't need very much of it, and I will catch that in like so. I'm not going to overdub it really, just get it onto the shank, and then we can always come back to our dubbing dispenser if we require a little bit more dubbing. But I think we're going to be alright on this occasion. Maybe a wee bit too much actually. Just ease that off. So I've caught that in. I'm going to grab my magic tinsel and I'm going to stretch it just to make sure it's a little bit thinner, and then the first turn is going to come onto the shank, and then I can come up the fly like so, and then on the last turn I'll bring that over onto the thorax area, and I'll trap that in place with 2 or 3 turns. Get 2 or 3 turns in front, and that just stops the thread backing up and releasing the rib you've just tied in, and you can take away that bit of magic tinsel. So again, for the cheeks, I'm going to use some goose bites. On this occasion, I'm going to use these green ones that I've got ready and catch that in. He says as it comes out, catch that in. There we go, got it then. Second time's a charm. Again, I'm going to angle my vise slightly, like so, and catch in on your side. And I'm fairly happy with that. So the thorax then, we can't just build a thread thorax, because what that would do is add a little bit of streamlining and weight to the fly and make it sink quicker. So what I'm going to use, I would usually use seal's fur, but I don't have any black seal's fur. I've used it all up. I've got some Hen's Ultra Dub here, and I'm going to use number 46. It's quite a rough dubbing, and it's got a lot of the characteristics of seal's fur, so we'll just use that on this occasion. But if you are tying these up and you've got black seal's fur, it really works a treat. So we've got that on, and we're going to create our thorax. I do quite like the way this glistens though. Bring my thread to the front, then I can bring my 2 biots forward. Now this is an ideal fly to be using in conjunction with the washing line. So I've got 2 or 3 turns. I'm going to keep tension on my thread, and as I did with the quill buzzer, I'm just going to twist gently, or not so gently, until that comes away. Just check your side, that's good. Try and pull any of the fibres that I've got loose out the way. Because you're using nano silk, you've got a wealth of wraps, because it won't overcrowd the eye. Now, to finish off, before I do anything else, so I'm going to grab my pot of varnish here, and I'm going to add that to the thread. Now what this does is it stops me having to worry about coming in after the fly's complete and adding varnish to the head. And then I can cut that away. And it's quite difficult trying to explain how to fish a fly and trying to explain how to tie a fly at the same time. Bit of a challenge. But there we go, that's my slow sinking buzzer, and I would pull that thorax out a little bit. I'd use a wire brush. I'm not going to do it just yet because my head will still be drying, but basically this is ideal if you've got a fab or a small booby on the point of your cast and you have 3 of these up, short line to your fly line on the floater. That's going to keep that team of flies in the top 2 to 3 feet. The fab does sink regardless of what people tell you. Same as boobies. It doesn't matter how big the eyes are, eventually they will sink with the action of you pulling the fly. But there we go, there's my 3 favourite buzzers. I hope that's been of some use to you. If you've enjoyed the video, please do give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Now, YouTube seems to think that you'll enjoy the videos on the screen now.